I'm in Nusa Penida, as you can see today, and walking along this beautiful stretch of coastline. It's absolutely gorgeous, and let's see if I can tilt the camera over there. But you can see the volcanic mountains of Gunung Agung, which I'll just carry over really quickly with a B-roll shot over here. And it's a delight to be back here in Nusa Penida. It's been many years since I first traveled to this part of Bali, and it's been many years since the last trip that I've been here. I think the really beautiful part of Penida is its kind of untouched, desolate frontier atmosphere. I mean, there are villages here, of course, and there are, as you can see, some beachside establishments that are running a rather low occupancy business, considering that it is June 2026 at this moment. But I think it wasn't always this way. There was a time when Nusa Penida was actually a rising challenger to the Bali mainland. And if you'll remember, even at the airport, let me get this drone to fix another shot here for you guys, yeah? Okay, that means battery low. Gotta bring the drone back. Okay. Alright, I've never filmed myself doing this before, but let's see if I can get this all organized. Scene 2. Okay. So, hello there. Okay, well, I don't know what to do here. I guess I'll just have to turn off the drone video here because it doesn't make any sense to keep on recording, does it? Okay, we'll go to the main recording and we'll fold this drone up. By the way,
aircraft will power off in 5 seconds.
I am I'm really astounded by the capabilities you can get with these drones these days. It can follow you, it can take hyperlapse videos, it can do a lot of cool things. But the thing that I find pretty interesting is that where am I going here? Okay, give me a second while I try to hold the camera with one hand and hold all my gear with the other hand. Okay, I got it. I got everything in my left hand. So, my point was that I've been flying a lot of drones recently, and I've been crashing a lot of drones recently too. It's been very sad because, you know, these things are just completely unpredictable when you're a beginner on how they're going to behave. Like, for example, when you set a drone to actually track you on follow mode, what happens is that they keep on backing up, right? And any drone any drone that's flying backwards is always going to be a drone that is in a more crash-prone position, right? So then, as you see the drone trying to basically, you know, you'll see this moment where the drone is kind of flying towards these trees, and your instinct is to run over to it to save it, right? But the drone, because it's in follow mode, will of course only try to fly even further away from you. Thus, it basically creates the problem that you were trying to avoid, which is counterintuitive. It's very counterintuitive. You would think that, you know, you see an object that's struggling, like your pet drone here, and you want to rush over to save it, but the safest thing you can do is actually run away. Run away from it and let it chase you back into a safe territory again. So I've had that happen a few times. Flying at night, having people come over and say, hey, cool, you got a cool drone, let me take a look at it. And I mean, when you're flying, you have to be flying. You have to be in that zone. You cannot be like in a different sort of mindset or anything, right? So that part is also pretty critical. Let's see, what else? Yeah. Nusa Penida again. So back to the Nusa Penida story. So Nusa Penida was a rising star, and it was going to displace probably Canggu at some point. I think I even have the facts and figures on Google Trends to prove that, but if you're not familiar, you should probably learn to use Google Trends if you're an investor in 2026 here, because it's a very, very useful and helpful way of making more data-driven decisions. Like, you can do a simple search, just check the neighborhood that you want to invest property in against another neighborhood and see if it makes any sense. And if it does, then you can invest there. But if it doesn't, then you should probably, you know, take a look at other neighborhoods. And that then opens up the topic of, and this is a good topic, right? This is probably the heart and nature of the whole thing, of whether you should buy something that you love or you should buy something that makes sense. And I understand. I perfectly understand. I decided 21 years ago to uplift everything that was rational for me at the time, which was to continue in California, continue my high-tech career path. And I had a pretty good upbringing. I grew up pretty close to the neighborhood that Steve Jobs grew up. In fact, I was born next to the Apple headquarters. Apple headquarters decided to move to nearby, right next door to the hospital I was born in. I don't think I had any reason, or I don't think I had any effect in that choice for Apple to move their headquarters there. But that's how close I was to the high-tech industry. My father was an Atari engineer, and he brought back video game consoles because he was a test engineer. His job was to design test systems to make sure that the consoles, when produced in mass, would not fail and disappoint young video game players at the time. So then basically I grew up in this really high-tech leaning world. And the two biggest temples to enter this industry were, of course, Stanford and Berkeley University. And so I got into Berkeley, which was arguably a bit easier, but I studied electrical engineering and computer science, which was arguably much, much harder than most other the majors in Berkeley. If you guys are Cal fans right now, you can tell me how you feel about that. So I was supposed to actually go and enter the tech industry as a hardware engineer, you know, building basically the chips that go into smartphones that let them talk to the internet. But I decided I would come to Bali. And I decided I'd come to Bali because the job market sucked at the time after I graduated, and I came to Bali. And I gave all that up. I gave all that up to live here. And so was that a rational decision? No. No rational person would actually do that. And to the chagrin of my parent, my dad, I was mostly brought up by my dad. Yeah, it was a disappointing decision for him too, right? Because he had raised me to hope that I would join the tech industry and become a good electrical engineer like he was. But ultimately, I suppose what happened was that, I don't know. Yeah, ultimately, I suppose passion brought me to Bali. And I met the woman who would become my wife and all the good things that happened after that. So I fell in love with the island. I fell in love with the lifestyle. I fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with the Balinese people. I fell in love with the girls. So all of these things dissuaded me from making more rational pursuits. So I get it. I get it. If you're going to make an investment decision that is not entirely rational because you fall in love with a property, that's fine. But that's where a lot of happy stories end. That's where a lot of happy stories end right there. Because everything I've done, especially here in Bali, has always been tempered with this aspect of, and this is hard to understand for a lot of people coming here, that people here in Bali, and generally in Bali and Java, I've noticed, they want there to be harmony, okay? They want to not have a disagreement with you. It's not like anybody is wishing your demise or setting you up or any of these things. A lot of times it can feel that way as a foreigner. It can feel that somebody is intentionally, let's say, deceiving you or scamming you, let's say, into buying something that is of low value. But oftentimes it's just that people really want to see you happy. And so if you're happy, even if you're making what is perhaps a potentially very, very financially negative decision, nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's going to stop you. Nobody's going to say, hey, look, bro, you probably shouldn't buy that really expensive villa that has, you know, a label of 15% return on investment, but actually probably only gets a negative 3% return on investment after you calculate taxes, management, service fees, and permitting and incidentals. You can be sure that the government will get their first take. You can even be sure that management companies will get their first take, but you're the last person to be paid, man. And so if you're an investor and you can't understand that, then you'll probably start becoming a grumpy, disgruntled person in Bali. You'll probably be like one of those old folks that sit around and just blame Indonesia for everything. And I kind of get where that comes from now. I do understand where that comes from. That comes from heartbreak, probably. That comes from a lack of love. They've already put so much heart and soul when they were young and naive into being here, into thinking about things, but you know, like, ultimately it didn't work out the way they wanted to. So when you invest in Indonesia, I think one of the really important things to consider, and this is something that doesn't come really naturally to anybody, is to really think about how to balance, okay? How to balance your rational mind and your long-term financial status. And it can be done. It can be done. Like, for example, my wife and I, we have a prenup. So what's hers is hers from the very beginning. What's mine is mine in the very beginning. And I suppose since I didn't have much of anything when I first came here, that's a pretty fair deal for her. And for me. But whatever we build together, you know, that's ours, right? We split that. So I think that's the hard discussions to have. That's the kind of educated direction to balance your passion with having a long-term sustainable investment decision that you can be proud of, that you can be, you know, that you will tell your friends about instead of avoid. Like, hey, yo, Sam, what happened to that amazing Bali villa that you bought? Well, Walter, I really have nothing to say about it because it didn't perform so well. My manager took all my money, and you know, now I realize I built on green zone land and I can't even legally own it. So you don't want that to happen. Okay, all right, this is one of my first attempts doing these. I'll admit, I got inspired by the guy over on, I think, Sonora Diaries and also Bali with Krishna to do vlogs like this. I noticed that they've been copying my style, so I love to talk, and I realize I can talk anybody's head off about anything, so I might as well just do this, right? If you like what you see, let me know, because my actual experience of doing this feels absolutely ridiculous right now. I'm standing on a beach with a fucking selfie stick pointed at myself, and my hand's got like a drone controller, so I don't know if I'm going to keep on doing this if nobody likes it, okay? So anyways, if you do appreciate it, and I did actually happen to touch some heartstrings or whatnot, and as you can see, there's no script, there's no editing, this is just me kind of blabbering in a monologue fashion to the camera. I got one more. I was inspired by Bald and Bankrupt. That guy I do actually watch a lot. He's this British YouTube personality, and he goes to places I would never go to, like old East Soviet republics, and also the Darien Gap in Colombia. That's a place I like to travel in an adventurous style. I've been to Myanmar, I've been to like Colombia, I've been to places most people don't really want to go to, but some of the places he goes to are just a little bit too extreme. But anyways, I'm inspired by him to create this. All right, I've rambled on too long, so if you do actually like what you're seeing, please show some love, and then I'll keep on making these videos, and hopefully they'll be awesome. Okay, that's it.